It was 2:07 in the morning when the call came in. And at first it sounded like any other emergency call that comes into a 911 dispatch center during a quiet night shift, where the city outside is half asleep and the only sounds inside the room are keyboards clicking, radio static, and the tired breathing of people who have heard too many tragedies to feel surprised anymore. Lena Carter had been a 911 operator for 11 years, and by that point she thought she had heard every kind of human fear that could exist, from accidents and domestic violence to last words spoken in panic. But nothing about that night felt different at first. Nothing warned her that this call would not only destroy her life but also reveal something she never should have known. She answered the call the way she always did, calm and professional, with her hand already moving toward the keyboard before the caller even spoke. And she said, 911, what's your emergency? Expecting noise, panic, maybe screaming in the background. But instead she heard silence, heavy and unnatural, followed by breathing that did not sound like normal breathing, but like someone trying desperately not to be heard. Someone hiding, someone terrified of even existing in that moment. Lena leaned forward slightly, her instincts sharpening, because silence in emergency calls was never a good sign. Silence usually meant control, restraint, or something far worse than chaos. She repeated again, more firmly this time, asking the caller to speak. And after a long pause a voice finally came through, broken and whispering. And the first words were simple but enough to freeze her completely. He's inside the house. For a moment Lena did not respond, because in all her years she had never heard a voice sound so controlled while describing something so terrifying. And she immediately asked for the address, trying to trace the call. But the response she received next was not an address, not a plea for help, but something that made her stomach tighten in a way she would never forget. You know him, the voice whispered. Lena stopped typing for a second, unsure if she had heard correctly, and asked again carefully, who do I know? And that was when the voice broke completely and said something that changed everything, the officer. And right after that, the line went dead. No explosion of sound, no final scream, just silence. The kind of silence that feels heavier than noise, the kind that sticks inside your mind long after the moment has passed. At first, it was treated like a strange anonymous call. Maybe a prank, maybe a wrong number, something not serious enough to escalate. But something about it stayed with Lena, because she had heard fear before. But this was different. This felt personal. Like the caller was not just scared of the person inside their house, but scared of someone connected to the system itself. That same night, Lena reported the call to her supervisor, Janet, and they reviewed the recording together. And when they heard the words, the officer, the room went quiet in a way that felt uncomfortable. But no one wanted to jump to conclusions, because accusing an officer based on a single anonymous call was dangerous, politically and professionally. Still, something about it unsettled Lena deeply, especially when Officer Daniel Mercer, the department liaison assigned to night shifts, overheard the conversation and casually asked what it was about. Daniel Mercer was not someone anyone questioned easily. He was a decorated police officer with 15 years of service, a man known for calmness under pressure, someone who brought coffee to dispatch on long nights, someone who checked on tired operators, someone who seemed like the safest person in the building. Lena trusted him more than most people in her life, especially after he had supported her through her divorce, listened to her during breakdowns, and always made her feel protected when the job became overwhelming. But when she explained the call to him, something strange happened. It was subtle, almost invisible, but Lena noticed it because she was trained to notice small emotional shifts. For a fraction of a second, his expression changed. Not into fear or confusion, but something sharper. Something tense, like recognition, like a memory being triggered. And then just as quickly he smiled and dismissed it as a prank call, saying people often made up stories to waste emergency resources. And Lena wanted to believe him, because believing him meant staying safe inside a familiar world. But 3 nights later, the call came again. Same time, same channel, same silence at first, followed by breathing. But this time the voice was different because it already knew her name. Lena, the whisper said. And she froze because she had not given her name, not spoken it aloud, not anything that should have been accessible to a caller. And yet the voice repeated it again, slower, like it was testing reality. "He's going to kill me," the voice said, and Lena asked to. But before the answer came, there was a faint sound in the background of the call, like a radio crackling, like a police scanner. And then a word that made everything collapse into one terrifying realization: Mercer. This time Lena did not disconnect the call immediately. She kept it open while trying to trace it, but again the number was untraceable. And within seconds the line went dead, leaving only static behind. That was when things started changing in subtle but disturbing ways. Reports were suddenly missing. Logs were edited. Calls that should have been stored were gone. And every time Lena tried to push for answers, she was met with polite resistance, as if the system itself was quietly refusing to acknowledge what she had heard. Then came the 3rd call, and this time it was different because it was not just a voice anymore, it was instructions. "Don't trust Mercer," the caller said, and then described details that no stranger should know. Details about Lena's apartment, her routine, her route home. Things that made her realize this was not random anymore. This was surveillance, this was targeting. And someone inside the system had access. That night Lena stayed late, reviewing everything she could find. And she discovered something buried deep in old internal records. A pattern of calls over the past 2 years, anonymous reports from different cities, all mentioning the same thing: a police officer, someone trusted, someone protected, someone untouchable. And every case had been closed without investigation. Every file had been marked as inconclusive or prank-related, and every officer involved in those cases had one thing in common: Daniel Mercer. The realization did not come suddenly. It came slowly, like a picture forming out of noise, until Lena understood that the voice on the phone was not a stranger at all. It was someone inside the system, someone who had access to everything, someone who knew exactly how to manipulate evidence, someone who could erase calls before they became records. But what she still could not understand was why she was being warned until the final call. It came at 3:11 a.m. And this time there was no breathing, no hesitation. Only a calm voice that sounded almost resigned, and the first words were, "I knew." Lena laughed nervously at first, thinking it was a sick prank, but the voice continued, describing her shift schedule, her desk position, her conversation earlier that day. And then it said something that made her blood go cold. "You are going to die tomorrow night," the voice said. "Because Mercer knows you understand now." Lena tried to trace the call again, but this time she noticed something she had missed before. The call routing was internal, not external, not anonymous. It was coming from inside the building, from the dispatch system itself, and that meant the caller was not outside. They were already inside. The next night, Lena came to work despite everything telling her not to, because leaving would confirm fear, and fear meant losing control. And she needed control to survive what she was beginning to understand. Daniel Mercer was already there when she arrived. Calm as always, smiling as always, but now every smile felt different. Every gesture felt calculated. That night, she set a hidden recording on her console, And at 2:06 a.m., the final call came in. But this time, there was no stranger on the line, only silence. Then, Daniel Mercer walked behind her desk and quietly said, "You should not have connected the dots." The room felt like it stopped breathing. Lena turned slowly, and everything she thought she knew collapsed in a single moment. Because in Mercer's hand was a disconnected dispatch line log. Proof that he had access to everything. Proof that he had been inside the system all along. And then he admitted it. Not loudly, not emotionally, calmly, like it was routine. He said he never killed randomly. Only when people noticed patterns. Only when they became a risk. And Lena had become a risk too. Moment she started recognizing the calls, told her she would disappear like that. Others. But what Mercer did not know was that the recording was already live, and backup units had already been alerted. Sirens were the last thing he heard before the door burst open. He tried to run, but there was nowhere left to go. And within minutes, the man everyone trusted was in handcuffs. But the worst part came after, because when investigators recovered Mercer's encrypted files, they found something disturbing. Hundreds of recorded emergency calls, all of them ending the same way. A voice warning. Someone, and none of them ever got help in time. Lena survived, but she never returned to dispatch again. And to this day, she says she still hears calls at night when her phone is silent, breathing, waiting, and sometimes a whisper that says her name.